Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for everyone who's been waiting for me. And welcome to our viewers, subscribers, members. Let's just give ourselves a minute to make sure everything's up and running before we begin with the live stream. As usual, we have a bit of a delay before it reaches you directly. However, everyone who views this as a recorded live stream on my YouTube channel can view it regularly. And it looks like we're up and running, so we will begin from here. Again, welcome everyone. Welcome to the channel members, subscribers, and all of our viewers. Thank you so much for joining me for another live stream. I want to talk to you about a couple of things, and as usual, I will then open the space up for all of your questions and comments. If you wouldn't mind, obviously highlighting them, because we have a lot of comments that go in and out, and sometimes they get missed. So if you wouldn't mind highlighting them so I can reach them properly. And again, apologies in advance if I'm unable to address all of your comments and questions as well. I wanted to talk about a couple of topics in this live stream. Obviously, as the title states, Egypt deceiving Israel again. It's the same person who I quoted previously. His name is Eli Dekel, who was a senior figure in the Israeli Aman previously, or the Military Intelligence Directorate. I spoke about him exposing the 60 tunnel network in Egypt previously in Sinai, some of which have 10 meters width. According to him, they can fit lots of stuff, and they can be used to carry out attack missions, according to him. I spoke about this approximately 5 months ago in the early days of the genocide. And lots of increasing talk about Egypt and increasing tensions between Israel and Egypt as well. However, before I go into, Egypt and Israel, I wanted to talk to you about the situation of the Israeli settlers. So obviously the actions of Hamas and of Hezbollah led to 250,000 of Israelis who live in the southern settlements surrounding Gaza and the northern settlements next to Lebanon being evacuated. And these people, they do not trust the Israeli government. They don't trust anything that comes out from the Israeli government's mouth. They don't have security, they don't have safety. And now they're also again delaying the funds that they should give to the settlers of the north. So we had a report in the Israeli newspaper Ynet that the north will wait, the government delays the voting on the aid to the north. And these people are fuming with the Israeli government. They previously had multiple delays, and now they're delaying it again. Now, they need a lot of money to reconstruct and rebuild the northern settlements. By the way, some people don't realize the scale and the impact of the Hezbollah attacks on the northern part of Israel. Some of these Israeli settlements have been destroyed to 90 or 80%, many of them, because the Israeli army uses the civilian houses as bases. Because people were evacuated, they use them, and they disguise themselves in these places and conduct activities and operations against Hezbollah. However, Hezbollah, they have very sophisticated intelligence, and in many cases they attack them as soon as they establish a new base in those areas. They're fuming with Israel, and despite the fact that Israel is trying to come up with so many plans to send people back to the north and reassuring them, no one is reassured. Why are they not reassured? Because number one, the attacks of Hezbollah are getting more and more sophisticated. They're not stopping, they're intensifying, and Israel does not have a political answer nor a military answer. From a political perspective, they are unable to achieve an agreement, to reach an agreement with Hezbollah through any mediator, France, the US, lots of people try and mediate, to get Hezbollah north of the Litani River. That's not going to happen. They tried to do that with Resolution 1701 after the 2006 war. Didn't work. There is no way it's going to work now. The second option that they have is military action. Military action, it's proven that they cannot achieve anything by military action, even if their whole army is in a location. And the proof is Gaza. Look at Gaza. They've been waging a genocide in Gaza, displacing 80% of the population, destroying all of the infrastructure, all of the hospitals, every lifeline. Yet even with that, they are unable to achieve what they want. They're unable to achieve their declared objectives. There is no indication that they will achieve these objectives with Hezbollah in the north. And again, the people in Israel are fuming about this. And this is only when it comes to the people who are considering going back to the northern part next to Lebanon, or the southern part in the areas surrounding Gaza. Many people have already fled Israel altogether. They don't believe in the country anymore. And many of these settlers in those particular areas have purchased alternative houses in Israel, mostly in the central part of Israel. Which leads me to what I wanted to talk about tonight, the main subject, as shown in the title, problems again between Egypt and Israel. Okay, let's give ourselves a background for anyone who isn't really aware of the situation. Egypt did not want Israel to conduct a ground invasion of Gaza. Israel conducted the ground invasion in Gaza. Egypt outright refused to be part of the ethnic cleansing campaign when they were offered and pressured by many countries, including Israel, the United States, Britain, France, and Germany, to accept Palestinian refugees and allow Israel to ethnically cleanse Gaza. The genocide cartel, who I call the genocide cartel, Israel, the US, Britain, France, Germany, and anyone supporting Israel with this genocide. They're called the genocide cartel. And many of them are worse than Israel and have far worse histories than Israel. Egypt did not submit because they knew what Israel is about, and they declared it outright. You want the Palestinian people to be evacuated to Gaza so you can control Gaza altogether. This is not a military operation only against Hamas. The Palestinian people will not stop attacking Israel. They will carry out attacks from Sinai. If they do carry out attacks from Sinai, then the Egyptian country as a whole will be liable. Therefore, Egypt will be a legitimate target, and Egypt does not want to have this liability. As a matter of fact, the Egyptian president said at the time, if you have a problem with the people of Gaza, take them to the Negev desert, Sahara al-Naqab in Palestine. Take them to the places where you expelled them from in 1948. The people of Gaza who conducted the 7th of October are people who were expelled from 1948 territories, or what is now called Israel. Many people don't want to tell you that because they don't want to contextualize. Egypt has this position with Israel. Then they had a red line when it comes to the Philadelphia corridor. Israel still pushed, and they still push for Egypt to open, by the way, get the Palestinian refugees. They already, the Egyptians had countermeasures with regards to further security measures, further forces, places to house potential Palestinians who will be forced out. The initial plan of Israel was to bomb the actual borders and strike the refugees from the back so that they can flee to Egypt. However, Egypt implemented multiple measures to prevent that from happening. Then they started continuing and talking about Rafah. And invade Rafah. Obviously, Egypt, from their perspective, they said this would be against the agreement that we have with you, the Camp David Accords. And that's a red line. Then Israel came up because they were selling this lie, because they are hyper pathological liars. This is a nation based on a lie, on a pseudo narrative, a pseudo history. So they thrive and live and exist on lies. Everything they do is a lie, lies upon lies. They told the Egyptians and the Americans that we are conducting a limited operation in Rafah, in the eastern part of Rafah, that will be very limited. That's after what? They said that we dismantled all of the brigades of Hamas across Gaza, 20 brigades, and then we have 4 left. Where are they left? In Rafah. Beautiful. That's what Israel said. Next day, oh no, we're going to go to the center camps. Which center camps? You just got away from the center camps. What are you going to do there again? Oh no, there are more Hamas. So were you lying? No, I wasn't lying. I just want to go back there again. Okay. They go back there again. What do they face? Unprecedented levels of resistance. More than before. It's as if the initial invasion was a walk in the park, by the way. What happened in the last 2 weeks in Rafah, in Khan Yunis, in Jabalia, in the center camps of Gaza is unprecedented. With the level of actions from the Palestinian resistance, the level of equipment, sophistication, intelligence, everything. And even when it comes to the eastern part of Rafah, you see they came into eastern Rafah, they didn't face a lot of resistance. That was a tactic used by the Palestinian resistance to drag them in and make them feel comfortable. They went in, they started to feel comfortable. The blows came, blow after blow after blow. Unprecedented numbers of attacks, unprecedented numbers of casualties that Israel will never reveal, by the way. They have very fierce censorship going on, and you've seen from what's happening with banning international networks, confiscating equipment to do with the Associated Press, for heaven's sake, and only giving them back when they were threatened by the US directly, let alone in Israel and what they do. Yet you still have people who call themselves journalists who sell the pseudo-narrative of this pariah, genocidal, supremacist, child murdering state. They continued, they faced resistance, but they extended the operations. We're having more talks from Egypt. When it comes to Egypt, you don't know who is talking. An official source will tell an Egyptian network. We had several of these official sources coming out to Egyptian media in recent weeks saying that we respect treaties and we want peaceful solutions. However, all options are on the table, including military options. Does that mean they will carry out a war with Israel because of Gaza? No. However, they will carry out a war with Israel. They will go on a war with Israel if there is a threat to Egypt. Okay, and I said that from the beginning when people were expecting Turkey and Egypt to participate. They will not participate unless their national sovereign territories are under attack and something's happening to their countries that they deem as a national security threat, and they need to retaliate. Okay. What's happening on the Israeli side? Egypt, after they joined the ICJ and they're raising the bar, supporting the genocide case against Israel, providing more information, Israel striking back. How are they striking back? With more lies. What are the lies? Obviously, firstly, you have the 700 tunnels in Rafah, including 50 to Egypt. Now, again, listen to the number, 700 tunnels in Rafah. They were talking about 600 tunnels all across of Gaza in the beginning. Just go back and listen to the statement. 600 all across of Gaza. Now you're telling me 700 only in Rafah. Do you know what you're even talking about? Clearly shows this state is a complete massive failure, and they don't know anything when it comes to the tunnel systems of the Palestinian resistance. And that's why they're receiving such fierce resistance in Gaza because they haven't reached the tip of the iceberg. And that tip of the iceberg is the tip that the Palestinian resistance wants them to reach. Dummy tunnels, trapped tunnels, the tunnels that the son and the nephew of Gadi Eisenkot died in. Gadi Eisenkot, the war cabinet member who was previously the IDF chief, but they act like they are finding out these tunnels and they come up with this number. Why did they say there are 50 tunnels to Egypt? Look, there's undeniably a tunnel network, obviously in Gaza, a very sophisticated one that Israel will never find, by the way. They will never find the real extent of the tunnel network in Gaza. There's undeniably some tunnels going on between Gaza and Egypt, and obviously both sides wouldn't admit to it. Okay, however, Israel, would have some sort of understanding that that's happening, especially if they're revealing apparently the scale of tunnels that exist in Sinai, that will be used potentially to attack Israel. According to the same person, by the way, Eli Dekel, who I quoted a few months back after he exposed this tunnel network in Egypt. Okay, why are they saying that? They're saying it simultaneously with claims that some of the Israeli prisoners held by Hamas are in Egypt. Okay, why are they saying that? They're saying that to legitimize action against Egypt, potentially. Because if they're going against what they said to the Americans and to the Egyptians, they'll go against anyone. Hell, Benjamin Netanyahu is going against everything. I had a couple of videos posted today. One of them will be posted after this live stream as well, or during this live stream that you can watch later on. Benjamin Netanyahu is refusing to meet anyone. He's not listening to anyone. Benjamin Netanyahu is Benjamin Netanyahu. Whatever I want, I will do. The King of Kings of Israel. This is how he's behaving, as if he is a representation of the divine on earth. Not listening to, why should he listen to Egypt? Tomorrow they'll legitimize an act against Egypt and go in and face war and get annihilated, by the way, because they're not prepared to war with Egypt. The Egyptian army is superior now to Israel, by the way, but they're doing that to legitimize a potential operation against Egypt. And now, what are they saying? Okay, so the same person, this is the article that I wanted to quote from the Israeli newspaper Ma'arif's website, again on Lieutenant Colonel Eli Dekel, the same one who spoke about the tunnels. This man had a role in the Military Intelligence Directorate in Israel, and he solely focused on infrastructure in Arab countries, and he studied Egypt for 60 years. What they do, their tunnel networks, what are they up to, what new infrastructure they have, what's happening, all of these things. Okay, what did he say? Eli Dekel said that the title was Egypt's Bluff Exposed. This is how Cairo worked on us, tricked us, deceived us, regarding Hamas. Okay. Quote, a mediator should be neutral. Egypt has interests. They want to rule the Arab world again through their attitude to Gaza, and that's why they put us in our heads in the last rounds as mediators, which Hamas is reluctant to do. They act as if they are a mediator, and they're not a feeling. But according to him, they're siding with Hamas and they're tricking Israel. The article started against the background of the latest reports about Egypt's exercise in formulating different conditions for a hostage deal for each of the parties. Ma'arif spoke today with retired Lieutenant Colonel Eli Dekel, who has researched Egypt for over 60 years, to hear his commentary on the matter. Now, when they say Egypt's exercise and Egypt's trick previously, Israel is claiming that the proposal that Hamas agreed to was amended by Egypt before Hamas agreed to it, to show Israel in a bad manner. Typical, any way that they can, take responsibility of themselves, deflection, and lies, 24/7. Okay, despite the fact that, and according to reports in Israel, by the way, the CIA is unhappy with Egypt, which is a lie, by the way, because the head of the CIA, Burns, he was in Egypt when this proposal was signed by Hamas. As a matter of fact, the Americans took it in a good manner. They said it's a positive thing. We hope to reach an agreement. And they were critical of Israel when they rejected it. Okay? Because the people in Israel celebrated it as well, by the way. Immediately after this announcement, the protesters went out in the streets in Israel saying that that's it, we need to accept this deal. And why did they do that? Because they went out 2 months before, because the negotiating delegation said, we agreed on a deal, and Netanyahu rejected it. So the negotiating delegation already agreed on deals in Israel, by the way, that Benjamin Netanyahu rejected. What is that leading to? More, obviously, genocide against the Palestinian people, but more Israelis being killed. This is just another proof, and we speak about it constantly, that the Israeli government and Benjamin Netanyahu, they do not care about the Israeli people. The whole caring about the Israeli or Jewish people as a front is a massive bluff, a massive lie. If they cared about the Jewish people or the Israeli people, they wouldn't have carpet bombed Gaza knowingly when Israelis were there. Who does that? Come on. Only a fool would believe that. You have your people in there, and that's obviously, if you buy into the notion, the false and wrong and flawed notion that you only care about your people, not the other people, by the way. Unlike Hamas, funny enough, who treated the Israeli prisoners in such a good manner, according to so many testimonies and so many videos published of them after the temporary ceasefire deal when they were released. He continued, in general, he believes that in order to prevent such cases from in the future, we are required to conduct contacts directly with our enemies. Quote, in the past, we spoke directly with Arafat, and I see no reason why we need all kinds of intermediaries that you don't know what they omit along the way and where they cheat in principle. Again, blaming Egypt of cheating. And listen, before this, the tone with Egypt is very careful. This is the most valuable asset that Israel has, the peace treaty with Egypt, by the way. The pursuit should be to resolve conflicts without mediators. So what he's hinting at is have direct talks with Hamas. And in principle, that's a good thing. Have direct talks with Hamas. What's the problem? You speak with your enemies to try and reach a solution. Okay. He continued, however, he understands that sometimes there is no choice and mediators are necessary. Quote, like the Syrians in the Yom Kippur War, in reference to the 1973, who were not ready to meet with us. But even then, only when there is no choice should you take a mediator and make sure that he is as neutral as possible. Dekel explains why the Egyptians are not considered neutral. Quote, Egypt has global interests in all kinds of matters between us and Hamas and between us and Saudi Arabia. So why exactly are they being taken to mediate? We will recall that we spoke with Dekel, the article continued, at the beginning of the month when the kidnapped deal led by Egypt was taking shape. He told us that Egypt has the motivation to lead the Arab world and that through its involvement as a broker in the deal, it is making it happen. So he also warned us of a military confrontation with Egypt, which he said it was preparing for. Egypt is preparing for a military confrontation with Israel. Who's saying that? Eli Dekel, Lieutenant Colonel, who studied Egypt for 60 years and who led a group in the Israeli Military Intelligence Directorate previously. He is saying that Egypt is preparing for a military confrontation with Israel. He believes that Egypt has the interest in Hamas not being completely destroyed and that it has a great desire to sabotage Israel's normalization with Saudi Arabia. So it's not just Hamas and the Palestinians, because there's this false notion that the whole campaign of the 7th of October was to prevent a normalization, as if the Palestinian people don't have their own interests and have their own unique location and circumstances and demands and injustices historically, as if they do stuff just in spite of other. What kind of rubbish is this? Even today, he is suspicious of Egypt. He claims, Dekel, quote, there is no one to trust. Someone has put the machine into a coma on us. Hamas is collapsing. He's saying that Egypt is trying to comatize Israel, sell them the illusion that Hamas is collapsing to reach a deal. Although they know that they're not, and they're not interested in Hamas collapsing. He attributes this, among other things, to the Egyptians who mediated between Hamas and Israel in all recent rounds. Quote, they tricked us into thinking about the fact that Hamas is on the move. He claims that this is a theory. He claims that this is a theory that is as good as any other, and understands that there are those who will say that is a conspiracy. But he repeats his words, quote, I suspect anyone who mediates that the mediation will not be fair. He also mentioned, quote, the one who caused the problem all these years is the Egyptians. For decades, they were able to supply electricity to Gaza, and it is very convenient that it depends on a power plant in Ashdod. They really have an interest in this business bleeding endlessly. The tricks they do along the way are all kinds of big and small lies. And he concluded, I have been arguing for years. Who needs these middlemen? They only add to their interests. They cut coupons. Who needs them? And he ended it with that. Again, this is coming simultaneously with a blame game between Egypt and Israel about the Rafah crossing, who's preventing the aid in. Now you have 2,000 trucks in Sinai waiting to go in. Israel is blaming Egypt, Egypt is blaming Israel. But the situation is very clear and evident. What's happening is Israel has a temporary, unstable control on the Rafah crossing after they invaded East Rafah, and the Rafah crossing is in the eastern part of Rafah. Egypt does not want to recognize Israeli presence in Rafah, on the other side of the border. Why do they not want that? Because this will set a precedent for the future that we're fine with Israeli forces being on this border. Now, there's another argument here. Why would they have a problem with Israeli forces directly if they have an agreement with Israel with regards to the Rafah crossing, the three-way agreement they have between Israel, Egypt, and obviously the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, but eventually all of the aid goes to Gaza? It's because of the interest of Egypt to have a front in Gaza. And this is aligned with an Egyptian intelligence policy and thinking that I quoted the previous head of the late Egyptian head of intelligence, Omar Suleiman, was quoted saying that we need a strong Hamas in Gaza to be like a stick in Israel's neck or a knife in Israel's neck, so that they are dealing with them rather than dealing with us. And now I'll open the space up for you. This was the main thing that I wanted to talk to you about in this video. And obviously I have another video coming up soon. You can watch it after the live stream about exactly what's happening in the cabinet in Israel, which is very important. I posted a video earlier on. If you have a question about that one, you can ask me as well, about Ismail Haniyeh in Iran. Obviously I have a lot of talk about Iran now, the Iran haters, everything's bad from Iran. And it was a very clear statement from Hamas. Teshikom is saying, is there any more news about the new state in the north? Funny enough, no. It looks like this didn't come to fruition late, or that Israel is not publishing any more evidence about it, because anything to do with splitting Israel is a catastrophe. For Israel's already split. You already have millions fleeing Israel. You already have residents who don't want to go back to the north or the south. It's in its worst position ever. Israel, it's living its worst times now after the 7th of October. But we haven't had any further elaboration on that. Where there's more censorship about this, again, some things are very difficult to get a hold of in Israel due to military censorship. Sadullah saying, will the Egyptian people finally rebel, oust Sisi, and break the siege on Gaza? Does the Egyptian army have enough troops, equipment to liberate Gaza from the IOF currently? I think the Egyptian army can easily take down the Israeli army. Personally, if they go on an all-out offensive, the Israeli army now is defeated, is weak, it's in need of supplies. The Palestinian resistance and the Lebanese resistance damaged them severely. It blinded them in many cases. Hamas and the Palestinian resistance in Gaza took down over 1,200 Israeli military vehicles, including 1,000 tanks. And again, that's not like completely destroyed, targeted though. Some of them wholly, some of them partially. Might have been repaired, and Israel has a problem with repairs, by the way, and getting spare parts. So many people don't know that. But that's the situation in Israel. What? Tiger troop carrier, done. They're using the M113. Merkava 5, done. They're using Merkava 4s that are barely working. They're roasted. And that's Israel for you. A paper tiger that's collapsing. So, and you're talking about days of war of attrition. When was the last time Egypt had a war? Israel is actively waging a war, a genocide, with all of its military, is incapable. Where? On supposedly the weakest link, Gaza. They're incapable of taking decisive measures in the West Bank, led by the Palestinian Authority under the authority of Israel. Fears now they're raiding Jenin and destroying infrastructure, and they're still facing resistance. What is that? How do you explain that? You explain it by Israeli incompetence. They're incapable. And again, why is that? It's because of their stubbornness and persistence in continuing the regime of ethnic supremacist apartheid, of Jewish supremacy, of Zionist supremacy. That's why they won't give people between the Jordan River to the sea equal rights. They want to have superior rights based on religion and ethnicity. That's what you have. That's what you get. Otherwise, it's very simple. Equality. If everyone between the Jordan River to the sea had equal rights, and what is equal rights like? I mean, why should anyone argue the concept of equal rights, by the way? I just want to raise that question. Why should anyone have a problem with this concept? You tell me. They're going to have to believe in some sort of racial superiority or religious superiority, shouldn't they? Otherwise, we're all equal human beings, aren't we? And we deserve the same rights. The Palestinians, the Israelis, the Muslims, the Jews, the Christians, the atheists, everyone, equal rights. You have the Declaration of Universal Human Rights from the UN. Again, another piece of nice ink on paper, Oh, yeah, we're nice. But guess what? We're not going to implement it. Like this leader told the ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, who I don't like, by the way. This man, by the way, looks like he's compromised or is completely unprofessional, or he has lots of problems, Issuing arrest warrants against people under occupation. What the hell is wrong with you? Going against international law. But anyway, what did he say? He said in an interview with CNN that a leader told him a leader that he spoke with told him that ICC is there for Africa and thugs like Putin. See? For Africa and for thugs like Putin. Racism to the core, depravity. So they can, if it happens. But Egypt will not wage war only for the sake of Gaza. They won't do that. I said that from the beginning. And obviously it's wrong not to take action to end the genocide at least, or use the leverage required, the level of leverage required to stop a genocide and threaten Israel. When Israel's genocidal cartel allies are supporting them with whatever they need. Arms, intel, weapons, everything. Imdad's saying, Mahmoud brother, how long will the perverted relationship between Israel and USA last now that many countries accepted Palestine? The relationship between the fictional and artificial, by the way. Look, many Americans believe that the relationship or the interest of the US in Israel is not for the benefit of the American people. But it's there because of the cartel and lobbies creating this false notion. Mainstream media, mostly run by the empire of Rupert Murdoch. Who's Rupert Murdoch? A profound Zionist who cares about no one. Any of the people, really. This man led disasters, justifying wars and crimes against humanity and everything. And the people of the US are realizing that. The question is, how long will it take, and at what level the activity must be for the decision makers to realize and comprehend very well that now it's becoming a burden. Really. Israel already made it a burden by going against US advice. Usually in Israel, if the president of the United States says tone it down, for example, or let's reach an agreement, or what have you, they will. But now Israel is ruled by this radicalism, by this extremism that is considering no one. They just do whatever they want. So I think that will, firstly, that's changing already. And if we're talking about its end, it would depend on how active the American people would be, and in any other nations, the people of this nation. Until it reaches a stage where the country, no matter how much they love Israel or have affiliations with them, realize that having this state there and supporting it is untenable, and we're getting there. If you are having already European countries saying that we will comply with the ICC, and Israel's now threatening them, then that could easily reach the United States very soon as well. El Karaki, thank you so much, brother, and everyone else contributing with your comments. Let's see if we have any more questions. Sapi saying, Salam Mahmoud, the Egyptian red line was Rafah. Why have they not done anything? Because it's mostly talk. Like Egypt usually talks a lot. Now, mind you, they didn't say that if you invade Rafah, we will take military action. They never said that. They said it's on the table, there is an option, all of that. But no one in Egypt said outright, if you invade Rafah, we're decisively and unequivocally taking military action. They didn't say that. The only thing that they're doing now in Egypt is refusing to deal with Israel altogether. And this is frustrating Israel, by the way. That's why Israel is constantly saying now Egypt is banning the aid. They want to show Egypt as if they're the ones preventing the aid, even though even before, when you spoke about the aid going from Rafah and to Gaza, and obviously there's criticism about Egypt adhering to these agreements anyway, but it was Israel preventing it. Okay, now they're setting this new reality. Well, from Egypt's perspective, I told you I'm not going to deal with you, and I'm not going to accept this if you're on that side. And Israel did it anyway, and they're expecting that. Typical arrogant, entitled position, really. But like I said, so long as the situation is in Gaza, they won't interfere. As negative as that is, by the way. No one did anything enough to a level to stop the genocide. What would have been the level, by the way? What would have been the threat level to actually intimidate Israel? Threatening to level parts of Israel like they level Gaza. Threatening to wipe out whole parts of Israel like they threatened to wipe out Gaza. Because if you don't have the same level of threat against you, you don't understand. You're entitled. You think you are, you have impunity and you can do whatever the hell you want to do. Because you're supported by countries who call in the name of democracy and human rights. If you had a country that told Israel, I'll wipe this area out, then maybe. But we don't have that. The only thing we have is some actions, obviously, from the resistance movements, which proved to be quite effective. They created a new equation and they intimidated Israel to an extent, but not to an extent where it would completely stop the genocide. And each country has its own reasons for that. Even if you talk about Egypt or Turkey or Iran, or because look at even the Iranian direct response. Okay, they support the resistance movements, but their direct hit, direct attack on Israel, when did it happen? After Israel attacked their sovereign territory in the form of the consulate in Syria. And that's a similar situation with other countries too. Because they don't want to have the international implications. They know their limits, the risks, whatever it is, and whether you justify it or not, by the way. Our point here is to analyze. Josie Baz is saying there is a part of Egypt that Israel considers Eretz Israel. Has it always been a part of their plan, or am I wrong? There is Eretz Israel Hashlema, or the complete Eretz Israel. Euphrates to the Nile. That's Israel. That's what they want. They had Sinai. They claim to be the Jewish state, don't they? Jewish. We all know the facade, and they're using it as front. What's the holiest place in Judaism? Where was the Old Testament revealed in accordance to Jewish belief? Sinai. 10 Commandments. Sinai. Okay. You occupied Sinai. And at the time, they used to consider the fate of Sinai as the fate of Tel Aviv, and they had all of these comments, by the way. It's our land, and we consider it a natural part of Israel, and what have you. There was a bit of an argument from some Israelis, but in general, from the Israeli leadership, this was the tone, that, the role of Sinai is as it's like Tel Aviv. All right. if you call yourself a Jewish state and you supposedly the state of the Jewish people, why would you get rid of the most important land in accordance to, or at least to some beliefs, right? Because many Jewish people even say that the Jewish faith is not related to a land altogether, it's a religion, okay? Why get rid of Sinai or give up Sinai after a war? Okay, we all know it was because of war, and Israel understands the use of force, the language of force. But if you were that keen on Judaism and what have you, you'd always talk about Sinai. You stop talking about them. What does that hint? That you're not genuine when it comes to Judaism and land, and that you will retract and take a step back when you're forced to. When you're intimidated. So they have a plan and they have future plans. What they're doing in Gaza was a plan that they just implemented. And that's why they sold this whole lie about the 7th of October and sold the pseudo narrative and the babies and the rape and the garbage when they massacred their own people. They have the same plan with Sinai. They have a similar plan across all of the Palestinian territories, including the West Bank as well. And Amin, thank you so much for your super. You said seems like there are more EU members officially recognize the Palestinian state. How would that stop Israel from what they're doing? By the way, what a flood of world opinion it is day by day. Look, it won't stop the genocide. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure how much it would support the establishment of a Palestinian state, to be fair. But what it is doing is giving further legitimacy to this concept of a two-state solution, because so far, the two-state solution, when countries spoke about it, it's been nothing but lip service. Oh, we support the right of the two-state solution. Yeah. And they'll tell you, oh, no, we don't want Israel to expand in the settlements. We don't want them to, but we allow them to, and we enable them to, and we cover up their crimes when they are expanding through violence and terrorism and land grabbing and squatting. But we support their rights, man. Typical garbage. So, if they recognize a Palestinian state, there's a bit more legitimacy, okay? There's more delegitimizing of Israel. You have the IC arrest warrants, as flawed as they are, including maliciously the leaders of the Palestinian resistance who are fighting in accordance to international law that the ICC must abide by. You have Israel on the ground, de facto controlling. And if they don't want to allow a Palestinian state, they will not allow a Palestinian state. And they constantly declare that we don't want to allow a Palestinian state. That's coalition and opposition in Israel. Where were we? Real life Somalilander Mahmoud, the country I'm currently in, living in Norway, recognized Palestine today, 22nd of May. Yes, I heard. And Israel is very angry, and they're threatening now all of these countries that recognize the Palestinian state. Typical thief. This is how a thief reacts, by the way. No, don't tell me there's a victim. There is no victim. That's why they're afraid of the flag. Who's afraid of a flag? Firstly, why do the people raise a flag, right? To show solidarity, sympathy. There's a human rights case here. But why are they afraid of a flag? I always used to think about this, why are they so scared? You see them so angry when they see this flag. It's because the victim is telling them, you're a thief and I'm here. That's why. And they don't like looking in the mirror. They don't have an ounce of self-reflection. A typical behavior of a narcissistic, psychopathic maniac. Nothing's wrong with me. I'm fine. God is on my side. God enabled me. That's how they run. Mental people. And Marlon, thank you so much for your super set. Thank you for still doing this after all these months. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Thank you. Talal Mansour, does Iran have troops ready in Syria as the axis of resistance in case of escalation? Iran already has presence in Syria. Obviously, they had presence in Syria after the civil war that many people criticized. And they have bases in Syria to support Hezbollah, obviously. Israel is very much concerned with the presence of Iran in Syria because they pass everything to Hezbollah. And not just over the ground, but under the ground as well. That's why Israel regularly attacks Syrian airports, bases, and again, without anyone saying anything, by the way. So, the enlightened democracies of the West wouldn't call it reckless when Israel attacks Syria. They're practicing an act of self-defense, they'll tell you. They're defending themselves. They attack Lebanon. It's the Hezbollah. They're the baddies. What is that? Delusions, I'm telling you. But some people, to them, if that person says this, then that's what's right. And again, that's collapsing. But yeah, they will have a lot of support through Syria. As a matter of fact, Iraq will have stuff through Syria. And let me remind people, when Israel occupied the Golan Heights, the government in Syria, they asked the help of Iraq in liberating the Golan Heights. And the Iraqi army went. And the Iraqi army was almost in Tiberias. And they told the Syrian leadership, because they had the same parties, Hizb al-Ba'ath. And the Syrians said no. Clearly there was a deal between the Syria, Israel, and the US to give away the Golan Heights, at least temporarily, right? Because then there was the prospect of a peace treaty with Syria simultaneously with the Palestinians in 1993. There were talks with Bashar al-Assad and potentially giving up the Golan Heights. Many people in Israel resisted that, and they said, they used to have stickers, the people are with the Golan, it's ours, the Golan Heights are ours. But there were talks about Israel giving up the Golan later on during a peace treaty. But what I wanted to highlight by giving this example is that Syria is a very attractive place, a very attractive country for Iraq and Iran and other countries too to go through Lebanon. That's why Israel is always worried about Syria, and to them, they have a big interest in supporting a government that will be aligned with them in Syria. And that was evident from the civil war in Syria, where you've had people who showed willingness outright to have direct relations with Israel. Hell, even some people celebrate Israeli attacks on Syria. It reached that level. And that's obviously a problem, regardless of how you view this and what the Syrian government does against its people, for example. But where it reaches a level where people are supporting Israel against their own state, in some cases it's absurd and just shows that there's lots of problems with these people who push for this narrative. Stephen, thank you so much for your super. Khalid Razak is asking me, do you know what that deal may have been? I've often wondered why Iraq forces turned back. They turned back because Hafez al-Assad at the time told them to go move back and not continue. And Iraq were not happy with that, by the way. They wanted to go in Israel. And that's why they had a big problem with Iraq, by the way. And that's why they ended up taking down Saddam Hussein. The INCOG, thank you so much. You're saying international pariah status is a hard label to shake until systemic changes are made. Does the United States even have a manufacturing capacity to ramp up for a full escalation of hegemonic proportions? That's arguable. You know, I don't think they do. Look, there isn't an indefinite supply of TNT. That's number one. You know, the countries that are engaged in war, they can't constantly manufacture, and the US included. And obviously the US is looking at itself as a country and not just Israel, by the way. That's why they wouldn't be seeing eye to eye, right, when it comes to Israel. Ramplan saying, Mahmoud, who does Israel is the one can decide if they will be a Palestinian state or not? What gives them that right? No one has that right. They don't have that right. But they act like they have that right. Why? Because they have the military power. And because they're supported by the US, by Britain, by other European countries. They don't have that right. They don't have a right over the land. They stole the land. They expelled the people based on a pseudo-narrative, speaking in the name of Judaism to fool people, because it's easy to fool people with religion. Right? Oh, hey, hi, hello, we're God's chosen people. God said that, let's not argue, bye. And people do that not just in Judaism, but Israel is doing it in the name of Judaism. And they don't have a right to say, of course they don't, but they have the power. And the world is not run by who's more just and who has more right, is it? That's not the case, unfortunately. You know, we hope that we can reach a stage where we have this type of world where political conflicts are resolved diplomatically and not through armed conflict. But you can reach that when you have a more of a multipolar world with more equality when it comes to powers, with more countries being more powerful and having a level of intimidation. Because you saw how many Western powers deal with the whole world when they have the upper hand as lower class human beings. And much of it is backed by an ideology. What, the Aryan race ideology, doesn't it exist to this day? The world classly race, doesn't that exist today? Israel, religious supremacy, exists and supported by people in power. And that must end. That must end so that every human being can have equal rights like they deserve, really. And that was the last one. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Oh, sorry, I have one from Emily. Hold on a second. Emily said, "What's was the floating dock in Gaza discussed with who?" I mean, it's apparently now some aid is going in through this dock, but it can't provide an ongoing answer because you cannot make up the numbers that Gaza needs over there. And again, it's still ambiguous. Although they're sending aid through it, Lord knows what they want to use it for later on. Plus, it doesn't make sense. The same country that's arming Israel with lethal 1-ton bombs, killing women and children, is creating a dock. You have the power to tell your little puppet cult to open the borders by a couple of actions. But they're not, obviously, so it's ambiguous. And again, thank you so much for everyone who joined me. We'll finish it there. Thanks again very much to Amin, R.A. Zar, Marilyn, Stephen, the Incog, and Khaled for all of your supers. I have another video coming up, or it's been published now. You can go ahead and watch it. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will see you soon in the next video. Take care.